and welcome to another episode of Lokniti podcast. I'm your host, Shivansh Mishra, and today we dive into the depths of a geopolitical quadrant that has the potential to reshape international relations, the Red Sea crisis. The Red Sea, a region rich in history and strategic significance, is experiencing a surge in tensions that has captured the attention of the world. In this episode, we aim to unravel the layers of complexity surrounding the Red Sea crisis. Since November, Iran-backed Yemen's Houthis rebels has attacked 25 commercial ships in the Red Sea in response to Israel's bombardment in Gaza. And these attacks has sent a shockwave in the global supply chains and shipping industry. And why that is the case? 15% of global seaborne trade passes through the Red Sea. It includes 8% of global grain trade, 12% of seaborne oil trade. If we talk about the implications on India, Bloomberg has reported that India's export could shrink by 6.7%, that is roughly $30 billion. The series of attacks has forced vessels to take a longer route around the Cape of Good Hope, and that is now adding more cost and time. To further explore the crisis, today joining us Dr. Kashmiri R.S., who is an expert in maritime security and Indo-Pacific region, and is currently working as an assistant professor in School of Liberal Studies at the University of Petroleum and Energy Studies, Dehradun. So, very good morning, ma'am. I want to know that how do you see this crisis? What is your assessment on this emerging situation? As we have seen, ultimatum has been given by the UNSC and collective statement of 13 countries released by the White House stating the same. So, what's your take on this? And how do you see this situation evolving?
Okay, first of all, good morning. So it is important that we understand the geopolitical importance of Red Sea before we move forward with the session. Now, the point is that majority of the world trade passes through oceans. Around 90% of the world trade passes through oceans. And if you look at Red Sea, because of Suez Canal, which is the largest artificial canal that has been made as a waterway connecting the Arabian Peninsula or the northern part of Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea and Europe, because of the Suez Canal, Red Sea has become one of the busiest, one of the shortest, and the quickest sea route between Asia and Europe, saving around 6,000 nautical miles of difference if you otherwise have to take the Cape of Good Hope and travel across the African peninsula. Now, what the repercussions of the current ongoing crisis in global economy and global politics is because of the strategic importance of this maritime passageway, which is also because, say, if you look at the Arabian, the continent and the, Arabian Peninsula and the African continent, this due to extreme, religious extremism and instability, political instabilities and terrorism, these are also geopolitically dangerous places in the world. So even if you are ready to add a 6,000 nautical miles extra to your trade, even the other option, the alternative option that you have, is also a space which is hugely perilous and dangerous because of pirates. Because even in the Nigerian coast or the Somalia or Djibouti, all these are spaces which are very dangerous for maritime transport to go. So if you look at maritime security as such, the traffic that passes through this region is unfathomable, with lengthy queues of hundreds of ships that passes through the strait. If you look at this strait, Bab al-Mandeb Strait, which is also known as the Gate of Grief, because it's too narrow a passage to transport around $1 trillion US dollars worth trade. Now, and this passage is between Yemen in the Arabian Peninsula and Djibouti in the Horn of Africa in the African continent. So to understand that the geopolitical significance of this place is so huge is the primary step in addressing the issues that, that is currently happening in Red Sea. Now, if you know that as you said, United Nations Security Council has come up with an, warning. Even United States have come up, United States, UK, Spain, France, all of them have come up with this operation called Operation Prosperity Guardian.
Yeah.
Which from December onwards, they are having these operations, combined multinational US-led military operation that is counterattacking or sort of saving the Israeli ships or Israeli supporting countries. So this is the current situation that is happening. There are counterattacks happening, but we need to understand from where the issue is stemming up. Who are the Houthis and why are they attacking, and why suddenly in the last 2 to 3 months we are seeing around 26 attacks, which are major in nature, drone attacks and missile attacks on ships. And what are the kind of ships that they are attacking? So these are important questions to understand, to also understand this issue comprehensively.
As far as we know, in the primary stages, these are the rebels backed by Iran attacking in response to the bombardment happening in Gaza. And they are mainly, in the initial days, they were mainly targeting the Israeli ship. But now, to escalate their thing, they have now started attacking the other ship routing towards America, France, Italy. So what will be the future scenario over this region and the implications on the aspect of India? That Bloomberg has recently reported that the Indian export could shrink by $30 billion. What do you think that what will the economic implication of?
So, as you said, of course, but Houthis are, of course, an Islamist political and military organization that's coming up from Yemen. And that's this one, there are certain scholars who believe that Houthis are a terror group which is supported by Iran. And, they are kind of occupying a lot of Yemenis territory, and they are not really Yemenis military. But then there are other scholars, essentially from Iran and, Iran supporting countries, who believe that Houthis are the original Yemeni military. Okay. So, because if you look at the kind of territory that Houthis have annexed, the whole northern, because Houthi is a tribe that has come from the northern part of Yemen, right? And though they got this name Houthi from their leader, Hussein al-Houthi, they have taken his surname, who was killed in 2004 during an ongoing military attack. Now, what happened is the north and northwestern part is with Houthis. Also, the capital of Yemen, which is Sana'a, is also under the custody of Houthis. Now, the current president of Yemen, al-Almini, is operating from, in an interim capital near Aden, and this is the president who is supported by Saudi Arabia, backed by, Saudi Arabia. Now, the question is, what is really Houthi? Are they a terror group that is coming from Yemen, or are they the real Yemenis army? Or this whole geopolitical issue that is brewing up in Yemen, is it just a repercussion of this Yemen trying to balance two great powers in Middle East, which is Iran and Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia is supporting the interim government currently operating from Aden. And Iran is backing Houthis who have occupied the majority of Yemen, currently. So really, if you look at Yemen is trying to, it's kind of getting torn apart. A lot of civilians are dying. So the question of who Houthis are is also very important in this conversation, because it sort of predicts what they are doing. So Iran has an axis of resistance centration. Okay, so this axis of resistance is because Iran's geopolitical ambitions in Middle East is very huge. And they, as I said, they have a Cold War going on with Saudi Arabia. So what they've done is they want to take all the terror attacks away from their border, away from their boundary. So they're looking for allies outside of Iran, away from, Iran. So they have this axis of resistance with, if you look at Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Palestine, and
Right.
Hezbollahs in
Hezbollah.
and also Lebanon, and you look at, so they have all these terror groups everywhere, and they are providing military know-how, military support, training, and supplying the real the weapons to these terror groups. Now, whatever we are seeing in the Red Sea currently is an implication of the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. And because Israel started the counterattack on Hamas, now how do, Hamas, how do you support? How do it's a payback time for Houthis to pay back to Iran by supporting the other, the points in the axis of resistance who are affected by the ongoing crisis. And the major intention of the ongoing Red Sea issues, or how Houthis are reacting, is to isolate Israel. If you look at, that's why I said it's important to look at whom they're attacking. So they are attacking Israeli bound ships. Because if you look at Israel is a country which is highly import dependent. Because there is no arable land there, there's water scarcity. It's a desert where they're trying to build a place there, and because of adverse climate situations, the majority of their food also gets imported. Their medicines, the supplies, oil, weapons, everything gets supplied through the ocean. Because if you look at Israel's position in the north, it is connected to the Mediterranean Sea, and in the south, it's through a gulf. It's also connected to the Red Sea. So by attacking Israeli bound ships, or those ships which are trading with Israel, what Houthis are trying to do is to support Hamas by isolating Israel, which is also something similar to during World War II, before the US entered World War II towards the end of World War II, if you remember. Initially, France and Britain and all of them were fighting. So Germany also used a similar tactic, but in the Atlantic Ocean. And they used these U-boat submarines. They put these submarines and we started attacking in the Atlantic Sea all the Britain-bound ships, all the ships which are carrying goods to Britain, to isolate Britain in the war. So that is a tactic that terror organizations, or in a war you do these kind of things. Now the implications of it is not just for India. As you said, there are trillions of dollars worth goods that passes through Red Sea. And the economic implications of this situation, the crisis, is not just on India, but also on all it's going to affect the global economy because of the sheer number of countries which trade through this. Remember the Suez Canal crisis that happened like a couple of years ago when the ship sank and it was an accident, and there were thousands of ships, traffic that happened, because that's the number of vessels that would get affected. Now, what the insurance companies have started doing is they have increased this hull insurance by around 300%, which has increased the cost of, crude oil by around 3%. All the products that is going to Europe is also the inflation of the goods are increasing. It is true that it has implications, but we will have to discuss the economic implication of this India. And also, of course, along with the challenges, what are the opportunities also that we are having?
And we have seen that India has deployed 10 warships in the region particularly, and in total there are around 23, 25 warships in the Indo-Pacific region. So what's the India's stance over this issue, and how do you see this?
India is first responder in the Indian Ocean region. Okay, so India is deploying ships in this region, do not have offensive interest in Indian Ocean region. So India do not go and attack countries, or the ships or the terror organization. Most of India's action, I am giving the statement, looking at the previous in the history, the kind of attacks that has happened before, have always been from a defensive point of view. So even the previous week when we saw there was this pirate attack probably that happened on an India-bound ship, and the Indian Navy was the first responder, and it's very reassuring that India has never been that strong a naval power before. We have around 7,200 kilometers of coastal land, but we have never really worked on our navy before. We did not even have a comprehensive maritime policy which would take into consideration all these things. So we have seen some programs, but it's so reassuring from a defense point of to see that India is currently even with the Maldives issue that is springing up, so reassuring to see this. And India is the first responder in this region, and India's aim at this region would always be from a defensive point of view. India will not go and attack the Houthis. I don't think that would be something that India would do in the times to come. But if there's going to be an attack on an Indian ship, probably India would use its defensive.
What's the geopolitical stamp of other countries like Egypt and Jordan? We have seen that they have now come in support with those 13 countries which are aligned with US, called Operation Prosperity Guardian. But these countries are also major beneficiary which uses this route, Red Sea route and Suez Canal route. So they haven't really stepped up. Not a statement has come up in this crisis. So how do you see that? How they will retaliate to the situation?
So see, the international political system in itself is very dynamic, and the Middle East in itself is an enigma. So there was this famous saying that Mohammed Saleh had. He was the president of Yemen for a long period of time, even during Arab Spring, and he said that to rule this land is like dancing on the head of 1,000 snakes. And a small misstep that you have, your life will be, in danger. And similarly for the life of all the people there. So Egypt and, Jordan and all of these countries have been hugely affected for decades of this ongoing war from 1948, since the inception of Israel in this, in the Arabian Peninsula. There has been multiple wars. When Israel currently has called its own fight with Hamas as the second war of independence, right? So these are places which are torn in religious extremism and instability to a level in which they are really sort of fed up of, the things that are happening, that they do not have, a free political will to make decisions. So the African continent, especially, if you look at, Djibouti and Sudan, all these neighbor countries to the Red Sea, are also highly, politically sensitive regions with its own challenges. So the scope of them joining US or the allies of US in a fight against Houthis would not be something that would happen. It's a prediction that I have.
What will be the economic implication in the respect of oil trade? Because we know that India is importing much of its oil from Russia, and that oil comes through via Red Sea and Suez Canal. So if ships will be rerouted or suspended for a longer period of time, so it will be a problem for India. So in respect of, and recently Goldman Sachs has predicted that the disruptions can trigger the prices of crude oil internationally. So what will be the major economic implication? So India should be worried about this situation?
For a brief period, yes. But in the longer term, it also, as we said in the beginning, that this also offers India a lot of opportunities. Of course, it's going to be a challenge for a short-term period, but for a longer term, it also provides. So if in G20, if you recollect, there was a program that the Prime Minister has launched called India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor as an alternative to the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. And where we have not done much work yet, and we have to also get a lot of partner countries to sign up on that. Now, what happened with this is that it provides us with an alternative. Now, majority of the world's energy supply happens through Red Sea. Now, And when we know that it is going to be a geopolitically sensitive region where the politics you cannot through, even if United States and allied powers and all of them come forward and they, have counterattacks on a Houthis, tomorrow it would be another terror group because it is a politically sensitive region, and to depend on, that region exclusively for your energy supply would be the biggest blunder of the century, because energy security is very important for countries and you need to diversify your energy imports. Like, for example, if we look at India's oil, oil that we use domestically, 72% of that oil is imported, which means that we are producing less than 30% domestically, right? And now if you look at within that exports, we export from around 25 countries, but the majority, 2/3 of those supplies actually come from Saudi Arabia, Iran, and a couple of other countries. So which means 2/3 of it come from 4 countries. So how much ever we diversify, so we need to have more sources. Though we trade with 25, with 2/3 come from 4. So what if there is geopolitical issue with those countries? You need to diversify your supply chain. You have to increase your domestic production, because India currently is the 5th largest economy in the world. So India just surpassed Britain and became the 5th largest. And above India, first is US, second is China, third is Japan, Germany, and India. Now, India can easily, in next 1 to 1.5 years, surpass Germany and Japan. And India will become the 3rd largest economy in the world. India is in the path of that rapid industrialization. A rapid industrialization that we probably in the 90s, late 90s and early 20s, we saw China doing that. So we are in that sort of a space, which means we will need energy to fuel our economy, fuel our industry, and we will find ways to do that. And to ensure that any country becomes a, superpower in any way, having a secure energy supply or energy security is very important. And this offers India. So if you look up, from India through Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan to Russia, can we think about pipelines we, laid to supply Russian oil, right? We can turn to domestic production. Are we ready to look at renewable energy transition a bit more faster? Can we produce critical minerals and rare earth materials from our ocean? We have vast ocean. How are we going to tap into it? So when you have also short-term prices are going to increase, it's going to create a lot of challenges. But on the long term, it also helps India with more alternatives, which are also stable in nature. And you need to have these options to ensure that you're secure initially, financially, economically, and energy-wise, so that you can become a superpower that you're aiming.
Do you think that this is the right time that India should learn a lesson and work upon their maritime security? Because the same would happen what we are seeing with China in the various part in the Indian Ocean. So we should work more upon our maritime security, because it's, I think.
Yes, India is already on a path for building its maritime security, but we are nowhere there next to China. We are not even 1/10 of the maritime capacities that China has. Whatever they have declared, we do not know what they have not declared. So India needs to really work. So you need to build on, right from spending, from policies to encouragement and schemes and programs on training, development, research and development in the naval wing. So we need to really rework on it in a better way, so that we can ensure that this is something that's possible, right? And also, we need to look at naval operations that are possible. Like, for example, we have Quad. One country alone sort of, fighting a bigger power. If the balance can't be, if there's no balance automatically that is happening, then we need to have coalition so that the balance is restored in the country, in the region, right? And China, of course, has a lot of enemies that's created all across the world. So Quad, for example, offers you that security. to have more naval cooperations. So building up on a comprehensive maritime policy to building upon our maritime infrastructure to having alliances and coalitions which would support, creating that sort of an infrastructure. It's high time that India works on it. Now, because the biggest threat sometimes, because we always think in the international political system, we always say the state is a primary actor. So we have a tendency to think China as the biggest threat for India. Yeah, also because of popular media and majority of the scholarly, writings. But the major threats, I suppose, would come for India from the maritime front, from non-state actors like Houthis and like Hamas and like this. So these are things that we have to be cautious about, because they're going to be the non-state actors, terror group with a form of collectives, which would cause more threat to India's security, similar to any other country, their security compared to other nation states.
Like these are not direct threats, but the indirect threats that can come in the shape of like supply chains and the other things which should be disrupted.
No, I think from non-state actors it would be direct attacks. But then also in politics we also see there's state actors, they're non-state actors, right? So there are threats also, like traditional threats and non-traditional threats. So the non-state actors can offer you traditional threats, which are defense or your direct, military defense attacks. But then there are indirect threats, which are also in a way very non-traditional, which we do not in a way, it is not, fashionable to talk about, which are, rising sea levels and climate change induced catastrophes that are happening. These are indirect threats. These are also threats emanating from the ocean to these countries. And any strong comprehensive maritime policy would also have, scope for addressing these issues.
Do you think that Quad will somehow be useful in the Indo-Pacific region? What's your take on this? It will counter China, basically. Yeah. That's what it's meant for. That's what the foundation.
It can counter, but there is potential for it to counter China, but it's not created in a way there can be a security collective there. And in case of an escalated war, which the scope is very less, we see more localized wars, right? Like now, it's been 2 years since the Russia-Ukraine crisis, the Russia-Ukraine war. What's happened? It's been 2 years. And then now we have the Red Sea crisis. It will be escalated for some time. People will talk about it. It will be so localized. But there will be another crisis. So this decade or the century is going to be a time in which we will see more localized wars happening all across the world. And the better way for you to survive, if you are smart enough as a nation, is to domestically produce, to be self-reliant and also to have diversified supply chains, to not be dependent on one particular part of the world for anything, starting from food to oil to trade to any commodities.
Right. So, thank you very much for joining us today in this podcast and for giving such insights on the issue of Red Sea. And let's hope that it should end soon and we can get out of the situation.
Thank you, Shivansh. I'm really happy to be here, and especially it's very special for me, this podcast, to be here. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much.